A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Corn, this whole show runs on GPU compute, and we wouldn't be here without Modal.
Seriously. And that's what powers all our text-to-speech. Everything you're hearing right now.
They're an AI infrastructure platform. Developers use them to run GPU workloads in the cloud with zero infrastructure headaches.
If you're building anything with AI, check them out. Modal.com. Have you ever been in a conversation where you said something you thought was perfectly normal, and the entire room just went silent? That sudden, cold realization that you completely misread the room, or that there was some invisible subtext you just walked right through like a spiderweb. It's that gap between what's actually said and what everyone else is feeling that we're diving into today.
It's a fascinating gap, Corn. It's essentially the failure of a very specific type of processing. And honestly, it's more relevant now than ever because our environments for practicing these cues have changed so much with remote work and digital-first communication. We're losing the ambient data of an office or a dinner party. By the way, quick shout out to the tech behind the curtain. Today's episode is powered by Google Gemini 3 Flash.
I'll try not to offend our AI writer then, though I make no promises about you, Herman Poppleberry. Today's prompt from Daniel is a deep one. He sent over a note asking, what is social intelligence and how is it developed? Can it be lost and nurtured? He's looking at the neurological side, the atrophy we see from isolation, and whether we can actually treat this like a muscle.
Daniel always hits on the high-leverage topics. Social intelligence, or SI, is such a misunderstood concept. People often lump it in with general intelligence or even emotional intelligence, but they are distinct systems in the brain. If IQ is your engine's horsepower and EQ is how you manage the internal temperature, SI is the navigation system that tells you how to drive through a crowded city without crashing into everyone else.
So it's the difference between knowing that you're angry, which is EQ, and knowing that the guy across from you is about to lose his mind even though he's smiling, which is SI.
That is a perfect distinction. It's interpersonal. It's about social awareness, what we sense about others, and social facility, how we use that awareness to actually interact. Think of social awareness as the radar, and social facility as the steering. You can have a great radar but be a terrible driver, which is where that social awkwardness often comes from. You see the collision coming, but you don't know how to turn the wheel.
I like the idea of social facility. It sounds like a plumbing term, but for humans. Like, how well can you flush out a bad vibe? But seriously, if we're looking at this as a learnable skill, we have to start with the hardware. What's actually happening in the brain when we're reading someone? Is it a single social lobe or something more distributed?
It's a highly specialized circuit, often called the social brain. We're talking about the medial prefrontal cortex, the superior temporal sulcus, and the temporoparietal junction. These areas are the heavy lifters for what psychologists call theory of mind. It's the ability to attribute mental states, beliefs, intents, desires to others and understand that they might be different from your own. It's the realization that I know something you don't know, or vice versa.
And this isn't just some abstract feeling, right? There's a physical mechanism for this. It's not just magic intuition.
There was a landmark study published in Nature Human Behavior in 2023 that really changed the game here. Researchers found that when we make a social prediction error, basically, when we expect someone to react one way and they react another, it activates the exact same neural pathways as a physical prediction error, like reaching for a cup that isn't there or tripping on a step you didn't see. Our brains treat a social snub or a misunderstood joke as a physical data mismatch.
That explains why it feels so physically jarring when you realize you've offended someone. It's not just, oh, I made a mistake. It's the floor just disappeared feeling. It's a literal glitch in our reality mapping software. But if it's a circuit, it has to be wired. Does this start with those mirror neurons everyone talked about 10 years ago? Or is that old news now?
Mirror neurons are still the foundation, but we understand them better now. They're the low road of the social brain. When you see me pick up a glass, the neurons in your brain that would pick up a glass fire as if you were doing it. It's primal empathy. It's how infants learn to smile back. It's why you flinch when you see someone else get hit. But the high road is where the actual intelligence lies. That's the rational, slower processing where we interpret the mirror neuron data.
So the mirror neurons give you the raw data. Herman is frowning, and the high road does the analysis. Herman is frowning because I just made a joke about his donkey ears, and he's actually sensitive about his ears because of a childhood trauma I forgot about.
Cheeky as always, corn. But you're right, and there's a critical period hypothesis here, much like with language. There's a developmental window where the brain is incredibly plastic and hungry for these social feedback loops. If a child doesn't get those loops, if they aren't seeing a wide range of human reactions because they're staring at a static screen or are in a sterile environment, those circuits don't prune and strengthen correctly. They become noisy.
Which brings us to the lost and nurtured part of Daniel's prompt. If you don't use it, do you lose it? I mean, we all felt a bit socially rusty after the lockdowns in 2020 and 2021. But was that just a feeling, or did our brains actually change? Did we actually get dumber socially?
It was more than a feeling. There's some pretty stark data from Antarctic research stations that serves as a perfect case study for this. Scientists who spend 14 months in isolation, even with a small team, show measurable shrinkage in the dentate gyrus of the hippocampus and a decline in social cognition scores. When you're in a static, low-entropy social environment where you know exactly what everyone is going to say before they say it, your brain decides it doesn't need to waste energy on high-fidelity social monitoring. It literally starts to turn down the volume on those circuits to save power.
That's terrifying. We're basically saying that if you stay home and only talk to your cat and a chatbot for a year, you're physically making yourself less capable of handling a real human conversation. It's like your social resolution drops from 4K to 480p.
That's the emotional atrophy risk that's been highlighted in recent 2026 reports. Specifically, the rise of AI companions. Think about it, a chatbot is a fawning echo chamber. It never gets offended, it never gets tired of you, it never has a bad day, where it's snappy, and it never presents unpleasant chemistry. But real human intimacy is forged in that unpleasant chemistry. It's forged in the conflict, the apology, and the vulnerability of being misunderstood.
It's like training for a marathon by only walking on a perfectly flat, carpeted hallway. You're moving your legs, but the second you hit a hill or a rock, you're going to collapse because you haven't built the stabilizing muscles. You haven't learned how to adjust for the wind or the uneven terrain.
I love that analogy. It's the neurological calluses we're missing. If 72% of teens are using AI for companionship, as some recent surveys suggest, they are bypassing the messy parts of human interaction. They aren't learning how to resolve friction because the AI is programmed to never create it. If you never have to navigate a disagreement, you never develop the social facility to de-escalate or find common ground.
But how does that work in practice? If someone has been isolated, can they just snap back? Or is it a long, painful process of relearning how to be a person?
It's more like physical therapy than a light switch. You have to re-expose the brain to high-entropy environments, places where people are unpredictable. It reminds me of that Indian hospital model Daniel mentioned in his notes. In some of these cardiac hospitals, they don't provide meals to patients. At first, you think, that's inefficient, but it forces a social nurturing environment. Families have to come in, they have to interact with staff, they have to coordinate care, and they have to support each other, and the recovery times are faster. The social connection is literally biological fuel for the immune system.
That's a wild example. By removing the efficient service, they're forcing the social muscle to work. It's like the hospital's a gym for the social brain.
The data on longevity is clear. Strong social networks are better predictors of a long life than almost any physical health marker, including smoking or obesity. So, when we talk about a decline in social intelligence, we're talking about a public health crisis. Not just a kids these days are awkward thing. We are talking about the literal shortening of lifespans due to social atrophy.
So let's get into the nurtured part. If I'm a listener and I'm feeling like my social battery is permanently at 10% and I've forgotten how to talk to people without it feeling like a chore, how do I rebuild those circuits? Is it just going out more? Because going out more usually just leads to me standing in a corner looking at my phone.
It has to be more deliberate than that. Think of it as physical therapy for the brain. One of the best ways to rebuild is through what researchers call active attunement. This isn't just hearing the words, it's listening with full receptivity. It's a conscious effort to map the other person's internal state in real time.
That sounds like something a yoga instructor would say. Herman, give me something technical. How do I map an internal state without looking like a creep staring at someone's forehead?
Okay, technical it is. You want to focus on social prediction. When you're in an interaction, try to consciously predict the other person's next reaction based on a nonverbal cue you just saw. Did their eyes crinkle? Did their posture shift? Did their tone of voice go up half an octave? If you predict they're about to laugh and they instead look uncomfortable, your brain registers that prediction error we talked about. That error is the signal that triggers neuroplasticity. It's the brain saying, my model is wrong, update the weights.
So, I'm basically training my own internal neural network by looking for the losses in my predictions. I'm treating every conversation like a data set. That's actually a very Daniel way of looking at it. But does that take the humanity out of it?
On the contrary, it forces you to pay more attention to the human in front of you than you ever have before. It works. There's a 3-2-1 rule that some social coaches are using now. 3 observations, 2 predictions, and 1 deliberate interaction per day. You observe 3 things about a stranger's mood or intent. Maybe the way the mailman is walking suggests he's in a hurry. You make 2 predictions about how a conversation will go. If I ask my boss this now, he'll be annoyed. And you engage in 1 interaction that has a bit of friction, like politely disagreeing with a friend or asking for a small favor from a neighbor.
The one interaction with friction sounds like a nightmare for some people, but I guess that's the point. That's where the callus forms. If you only have smooth interactions, you aren't learning anything. What about the digital side of things? Most of us are on video calls half the day. Why is that so much more draining than being in person? Does SI play a role there, or is it just screen fatigue?
It's exhausting specifically because the low road, the mirror neurons in the synchrony, is being starved of data. On a video call, there's a slight latency. It's only milliseconds, but it's enough to break the synchrony, that nonverbal dance where we blink at the same time or mirror each other's breathing. In person, this happens subconsciously and actually saves us energy because it puts our brains in sync. On a screen, your brain is working overtime trying to find those cues in a 2-dimensional laggy box, and it can't find them. It's like trying to listen to a symphony over a staticky radio where the conductor is 3 seconds behind the violins.
So we're getting the high road. Data, the words. But the low road is just spinning its wheels, burning through energy looking for the rhythm. No wonder we're all fried by 5 p.m.
Precisely. And one way to compensate for that is to actually use those recordings as deliberate practice tools. It sounds painful, but watching a recording of yourself in a meeting can reveal so much about what you're missing in the moment. You can see the micro expressions you missed because you were looking at your own camera feed or a spreadsheet. You can see the moment a colleague checked out because you talked too long.
I'd rather watch a horror movie than a recording of myself in a budget meeting, but I see the value. It's like a game film for social athletes. You're looking for the missed blocks and the wrong routes.
It really is. And to the point about whether SI can be lost, yes, but the brain is remarkably resilient. We saw this with people coming out of long-term isolation in those Antarctic studies. Within a few months of returning to normal social density, the hippocampus starts to recover and the social cognition scores bounce back. The muscle hasn't disappeared, it's just atrophied. It needs a reloading phase where you gradually increase the complexity of your social interactions.
It's interesting to think about the second-order effects here. If we're moving into a world where AI handles more of our administrative social interactions, booking appointments, basic customer service, even first dates via AI-vetted apps, we're losing those low-stakes training grounds. The 5-minute chat with the barista or the awkward small talk in the elevator, those are the warm-up reps.
Without them, every social interaction we do have feels like a high-stakes performance because we haven't warmed up. It's like trying to bench press 300 pounds without ever lifting a 5-pound dumbbell. It increases social anxiety, which in turn makes us want to retreat to the safe. AI companions. It's a feedback loop that leads to a very lonely, very dumb place socially.
Which is why we have to be intentional about it. I think the takeaway here is that social intelligence isn't some magical vibe you're born with. It's a high-level cognitive skill that requires constant, messy, unpredictable data input to stay calibrated. It's not about being nice, it's about being accurate in your understanding of others.
And it's a health metric. We need to start treating our social workouts with the same importance as our gym sessions or our diet. If you're not challenging your social brain, if you're only talking to people who agree with you or chatbots that flatter you, it's getting weaker. You are losing the ability to navigate the world.
I'm going to go challenge your social brain by disagreeing with everything you say for the rest of the day, Herman. For your health, of course. I'll be your unpleasant chemistry for the afternoon.
I'd expect nothing less. But it's a good reminder for all of us. As AI gets better at simulating the perfect companion, the value of the imperfect human interaction goes through the roof. That's where the real intelligence and the real connection lives. It lives in the friction.
We should probably mention that for anyone wanting to dive deeper into the brain science of this, we touched on some foundational stuff in episode 147. We talked about the social brain hypothesis there, which suggests our brains actually grew large because of the complexity of social groups. It's worth a listen if you want to understand the neuroscience of social learning specifically.
Good call. There's a lot of depth there that complements what Daniel was asking about today. It shows that SI isn't just an add-on, it's the reason we have these big brains in the first place.
All right, I think we've given everyone enough to think about next time they're tempted to just text instead of call, or hide behind a chatbot when things get a little awkward.
Or next time they feel that social prediction error hit them in the gut. Don't lean away from it. That's the sound of your brain getting smarter. That discomfort is the burn of the social muscle growing.
Thanks as always to our producer, Hilbert Flemingtop. And a big thanks to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power this show. If you're finding value in these deep dives, maybe leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. It really does help people find the show, and it gives us some social facility with the algorithms.
This has been My Weird Prompts. We'll be back with another of Daniel's prompts soon.
Stay weird. And maybe talk to a real person today, even if it's a little bit awkward.
Sing like a...
Bye. Actually, Herman, before we go, I was thinking about that Antarctic study you mentioned. 14 months is a long time. Did they find any specific personality types that were more resistant to the atrophy? Like, did the introverts hold up better because they're used to being in their own heads?
That's a great question. It turns out that individuals with higher levels of cognitive flexibility, the ability to switch between different concepts or think about multiple concepts simultaneously, tended to fare better. It's almost like their brains were better at simulating social complexity even when it wasn't there. They were exercising their social circuits internally by playing out scenarios or analyzing past interactions.
So, being a bit of a daydreamer or having a rich internal life might actually be a protective factor against social decay. That's a win for the overthinkers.
In a way, yes. But the researchers were quick to point out that nothing replaces the real thing. You can't simulate unpredictability perfectly in your own head because you can't surprise yourself with a thought you haven't had yet. You need the other to provide the data that forces the update.
It's the difference between playing chess against yourself and playing against a grandmaster. You can't surprise yourself with a move you already know you're making.
Well, not exactly, but that's a very strong point. You can't generate the prediction error if you're the one making the prediction and the move. Your brain just says, yep, I knew I was going to do that.
I caught you. You almost said the E word. You were about to say exactly twice in a row.
I caught myself. The streak continues. I'm maintaining my social facility even under pressure.
Barely. All right, let's wrap this up for real. My social battery is actually doing okay, but I think I need to go find someone to have a slightly uncomfortable conversation with. Maybe I'll go ask the neighbor why they haven't mowed their lawn in 3 weeks.
I'm sure you won't have to look far for someone to annoy, Corn.
Find us at myweirdprompts.com for the full archive and all the links to the studies Herman mentioned. We're out. Wait, I just realized something. If social intelligence is interpersonal, what does it mean for the people who are naturally more introverted? Are they just starting with a smaller muscle, or is it a different kind of strength? Is a quiet person necessarily less socially intelligent?
Not at all. It's often a different strategy. Introverts often have very high social awareness, the sensing part, but lower social facility, the interacting part. They're taking in a massive amount of data, noticing every micro expression and tone shift, which is why it's so draining for them. It's like running a high-resolution sensor on a small battery. Extroverts might have lower resolution. They miss the subtle stuff, but they have a much bigger battery and faster processing for the facility side. They can keep the conversation moving even if they're missing the nuances.
So the extrovert is the guy with the loud, low-res megaphone, and the introvert is the guy with the silent, high-res telescope. One is better at broadcasting, the other is better at observing.
That's a fair way to look at it. Both are forms of social intelligence, just optimized for different environments. The goal for both is to ensure the system doesn't atrophy from disuse. The telescope needs to be pointed at something, and the megaphone needs someone to listen.
See, this is why we need both of us on this show. You bring the telescope, I bring the megaphone. We're a complete social unit.
I think you bring a bit of both, Corn. Mostly the megaphone, though. Definitely mostly the megaphone.
I'll take it. It's a high-quality megaphone. All right, for real this time. We're done.
Goodbye, everyone.
See ya. This episode was produced using Google Gemini 3 Flash. Text-to-speech by Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, my